This is very, very interesting and fascinating. And I really think this is going to help people really run their businesses more profitably. You actually have a dollar number that you can tie that teacher to. That is incredibly valuable. Well, Sam, welcome to the broadcast here. Today we have a really exciting announcement. You actually have released a huge update to the Opus software, and we're excited because this is going to tell us some very interesting information as a business to be able to be profitable, to be able to actually see where our money is going as a business owner. So walk us through some of these new metrics that now are showing up on the dashboard.
Yeah. Hi, David. So, I'm really excited because this is something that, we've had some feedback from customers for months, if not years, that there are metrics that they were missing, or that they could not find the metrics they cared about, or that they had to do a lot of their metrics calculations. So over the last few months, I really talked to a lot of customers, right, to really understand where the gaps were. And I got so many, interesting ideas and insights. Some of it also came from you. You and I talked about how do we even calculate the average retention of average client retention, things like that. So we over the last few months, I've been compiling a lot of feedback, and we just released last night really exciting new set of metrics and dashboard improvements and retention metrics, and it's been really incredible because I've been working on this the past few weeks, and I couldn't wait to get the feature live so I could see with my real school data what does that look like, because when you develop, you're using test data, and then when you get to actually see real data, you're like, oh my god, like there's so many insights here that I'm so glad I have now. So at least as a music school owner, I'm super pumped and excited. I hope everybody will be. So I'm going to walk you through all the updates. They're mostly on the dashboard, and they're really, like I said, a lot of feedback we got over the last few months and even years. And I hope it's going to make a lot of customers happy. And we'll talk a little bit about retention and lifetime value of students, and some really interesting metrics that we added in the retention report. So first thing that probably everybody noticed, this is live since last night as of March 4th that we're recording. We've made a lot of improvements to the dashboard here. Some of the feedback that we had, it was first, customers were a bit overwhelmed with all the metrics that we had, did not necessarily understand what they all meant. They wanted an ability to just select the key metrics they care about. So we added this My Key Metrics at the top, and you can just go and select the ones that you care about. So I'm just going to select a couple of metrics, and we'll talk about them. So I care about, let's say, all the active clients we've had over the last 30 days in my school. So this is anybody who had anything on the calendar. That includes trials, that includes actual members, that includes people that may have dropped since. But anybody that's been active on the calendar the last 30 days, that gives me kind of overall activity. Perception, membership conversion rate. So these are your trial conversion rates. So how, on average, all your trials, how many of them converted to an enrollment. I like to have how many new students were new students with an active subscription, so new enrollments over the last 30 days. Maybe those that were lost over the last 30 days. So these are individual members, so not the subscriptions, but the members, so the unique clients. And then when it comes to subscriptions, we actually have some new metrics I'm going to talk about that are really exciting. One thing I realized is we've had these active subscriptions, and we have 5 or 6 different breakdown of them. We have all the active subscriptions booking, which means those that are actually on the calendar. So that would be like group class or private lessons. We have private lessons and group classes split up. And we also have weighted. So weighted, the idea here is that you're going to value more a 60 minutes subscription than a 30-minute subscription, right? Double, right? Based on how much time, the duration of them. So we've had those for a while, and they're great. But what I realized talking to some customers recently is that when they were doing their numbers, it didn't line up. And the reason for that is because this is the number of active subscriptions at the time you record your number. So let's say you're on the, February 28th at the end of the month, or let's say March 31st. You look at your numbers, and this tells you right now, or at least for the last few hours, how many active subscriptions are right now. But what we were missing here, and I realized this was a problem for a lot of customers, was that if somebody had dropped halfway through the month, or maybe their last lesson and their subscription ended on, let's say, in March 27th or 28th, and you're doing your number on the 31st, that subscription is already ended and would not show up as currently active. So what we've added is active this month. So basically the same metrics that we've had here, the same breakdown, but we made it also that you have the option to look at not just what's active right now when you look at your numbers, but what was active at any point this month with the same breakdown. So let's say look
Interesting.
at
Okay.
the active. So that would include basically, it's exactly the same as active up here, but that includes those that may have ended this month. And this is something I think where a lot of customers were confused when they were doing their numbers. They didn't see that lining up because they wanted to include those that may have dropped during the month. And we have it weighted as well. So that's something also that you care about. So how many subscriptions were active this month, and weighted also by so 30 minutes counts as 1 unit, 45 minutes 1.5, 60 minutes 2, and anything in between will be calculated accordingly, right? So anyway, so I'm not going to go through all of them. We have a couple of videos that describe all of these. But I'm going to add a couple more that are interesting. Let's say unique subscribers. So this is not the unique subscriptions, but unique subscribers, and also retention, right? So this is something we're going to talk about: subscription retention for private lesson. So this is basically the average retention from this month to last month. So basically, we look at all the students that were active members last month, how many actually are still members this month, and that gives you your retention rate overall. We're going to see that we also have it broken down by teacher, but here you have it at the whole school level, right? So let's just pick those. Of course, people are free to pick any of the ones they want. I'm just going to pick those 4 or 5 key metrics. You can have up to, I think, 32. And basically, this allows you to have the key metrics you care about at the very top, and then you still have all the ones that we have the ability to filter them below. But if you have a little bit of an overwhelm with all these metrics below, you can also filter them out and say, okay, here I just want to see this one, and here I just want to see that one, and then basically just keep your key metrics that you care about at the top here, right? So that's the first. The second thing you got to notice is, and I'm gonna deep dive in some of those. We've added a little it's called a spark line. So this basically gives you kind of the trend over the last 18 months, right? So we have the data, and we're basically showing you a little bit of a trend over the last 18 months for all these metrics. So that's a little bit of an indication on how are those trending. And what we also realized, and this is something trivial, but a lot of people did not realize that the date that was up here, you could click on it and you can go back in time and say, okay, what were my data maybe 12 or 18 or 24 months ago? And we made it a little bit more clear that this is as of today, but you can also select a past date and look at your data in the past. So you can open another tab and say, okay, I want to look at 3 years ago. How did we do 3 years ago compared to today? So you can do that.
Oh, that's interesting. So you could actually get a
Yeah.
snapshot of what your metrics were at a previous date, and then compare
Correct.
the two.
And this
Okay.
has always been there, by the way, but the UX was not very intuitive. People did not realize they could click on that date.
Sure.
Now it's just a lot more clear. But even better, instead of having to have multiple windows open, we're giving you also a way to just take the current values, so let's say as of today, and compare it directly with either last month, 3 months ago, 6 months ago, or last year, right? So now if you look at it, you have that green or red different. So that gives you an idea. So this is for my key metrics, but you have it for most of the metrics you have below. For my key metrics, active clients in the last 30 days, compared to last year, we're at 53 more active students over the last 30 days than we had at the same time last year. So we give you the direct.
That's awesome.
We don't give you just the little trending over the last 18 months, which is, by the way, this is the summer here that you can notice here. There was always that summer kind of dip and come back. And you can see that overall we're doing a little bit better than last year. And compared to exactly last year, same time, as of March 4th, a year ago, we had 53 more students active overall in the school. That includes trials, makeups, anything that's on the calendar, right? Same thing with conversion rate. So this is a very kind of like trending line and also comparison. And if I would just want to compare with last month, I can do this, right? So we did a little bit worse than last month, a little bit better here. So you can compare with what you want. I'm going to keep last year here because that's what I care about here. We added also an export CSV. So there's a lot of metrics there. Some people like to take the metrics they care about and put it in another application to track them and maybe calculate more things of it or use AI to make some analysis. We also give you the full export as CSV with all these metrics. That's another thing that's new. And here's something I'm very excited about. I realized a lot of those metrics, people wanted them broken down by duration, by instrument, by location. And we didn't have that before. And when I was asking customers, like, what is missing for you guys? And why do you have to spend all this time doing your numbers, as you say, separately, is because they cared about that breakdown. Now you have all these breakdowns. So if I look at my active subscriptions this month, weighted. So I have 1,856 active subscriptions. So 1,367 actual subscriptions that were active at any point this month, right? And also the weighted amount, where we take the 45 minutes and 60 minutes with the average rate. If you, and we have the hover, but if you just, now we made also, because the hover can be overwhelming, as you can see, it's not even fitting in my screen. There's a little caret here you can click on. And what this does here is we give you a pop-up with some interesting breakdown, right? So you have by duration. So now you can see, and also weighted, right? So we have 453 sub, 800 for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 47 for 50 minutes. That's our group classes here, and 60 minutes, 49, and weighted. So you can see that the 60 minutes counts twice. So we give you the breakdown by duration, by location as well. So there's something I know a lot of people were doing manually. Now you have it. So online only, Palo Alto, Mountain View, Grant, and Moffett, weighted, and actual number of
Wow.
we always have the by service, but by service can be a little bit overwhelming because you have multiple durations, multiple levels. But it's still important, interesting to have it. And by service tags. So this service tags could be whatever tags you set, but one of the most important tags that usually people set is the instrument. So I have it by instrument here. So cello, guitar, piano, string. This is my string ensemble, ukulele, violin, voice, right? So you have those breakdown now by service type, by location. If you look at another, I'm going to go back to my active subscriptions here, non-weighted. So actually we can look at here. Another one that we added, so you have service tags, you have duration, location, and actually, sorry, under active subscription, yeah. The other one that we added is something that we did a webinar recently asking for feedback, and people said it would be interesting to calculate and track how good are we at upselling students, right? So how many students have more than one subscription, right? So here we give you that an exact number. So right now I have 60 students. Not a lot, 4.6% of my subscriptions are students that have more than one subscription, right? So that's a number you can track and you can report on. And also because we give you a little pop-up here, it's easier to take these numbers, copy paste them, because before you had the hover and it's not very intuitive, not very easy to copy paste these numbers if you want to go copy paste them in some other places. So this, I think, is going to be game changer for a lot of people. Very excited about these new metrics. There's a lot of metrics, and we have another video. For some of them, haven't changed. They're explained in more details in the other video that we can probably link in this
Quick
post.
question on this summary data here. So like they hit that little drop down and it shows them kind of the summary. Is there a way, can they export that data? Is that what that CSV is at the top?
Yeah,
or is that
exactly.
just,
If you do a CSV export, it will just export everything in one file, and I'm not going to show it. Yeah, you have all of them broken down. And basically, what happens when you look at your dashboard is we actually pull 18 months of data. So we take the current data and then the last recorded data, basically at the end of the month for each of the last 18 months. So all that data is what we use here to display here. And you can also, this is another thing that a lot of people don't realize because the UX was not super intuitive, is you can also display those graphs and pick which so for example, if I want to add my subscription retention for appointment, I can add this. This is a new metric, so we don't have the historical data here, but we have that subscription retention here, or you can add, let's say, total clients for whatever reason. This is just all the data, all the people you have in your database, essentially. So you can add and remove metrics, and you can see those values for the last 18 months here. And same thing when you export the CSV, you have 18 months of data including the latest metrics you can use. And then you can run some AI analysis on it. You can export and pivot table, whatever you need to do with it, and copy paste them into another tool. So that should also help a lot.
Wow. So the my key metrics, that's really, I mean, especially if when you're looking at this dashboard, it just seems overwhelming because there is a lot of data points here. And if you really are just wanting to see like your top, 5 or 6 metrics, then you can just create your own key metrics at the very top those are your go-tos.
Exactly. Yeah. And also the breakdown, right? There's a lot of breakdown. By the way, there might be a bug here. So this is brand new. I'm looking at it with real data, and we're probably gonna find some issues and make some tweaks. This looks pretty low for my school, 33% retention. So I'm sure there's must be something wrong here. But I'd love to get some feedback from people watching this, and when they look at their school data, if we missed anything or if there is any bug or anything like that, obviously let us know. But there should be a lot more information now, especially the breakdown by service tag, the breakdown by duration, location is some things that I realized a lot of people were doing manually before, and that's gonna be a game changer for a lot of people. So here, there's another interesting one, is retention and average retention, and also how does that translate to student lifetime value. This is another thing we made a big improvement, and this is one that actually, thanks to you and I have been discussing like for a while now. And if you remember, I was having trouble kind of figuring out how do we calculate the average retention, the client retention, the average client lifetime. And we were like, okay, let's look at all the clients we had in the past, but then you get clients that never left, how do you count them? So should we only count the clients that left to calculate that average? And then I was never really able, I talked to a lot of customers about it, I was never really able to really figure out a good way to calculate this. And then you gave me a brilliant idea, and you told me, no, there's a complete different way to look at it, is looking at the churn. And basically, based on the average churn each teacher has, you can calculate on average, basically how long their students stay with them. And that's a very different way, more mathematical way to look at the. So let's deep dive in this, because it's actually a bit complicated. But this is the client retention report. So this is something people can find under the stats report tab here under retention. We'll talk about the room utilization. That's another one a lot of people don't realize we have. That's also very helpful, but we'll look at that later. So retention is there. And what you want to do there is expand the filter, and basically you're going to list all your teachers. You can remove your admins, your accountant, whoever is on the staff that doesn't teach, essentially, and you can look at certain teachers only if you want all your teachers. And then you're going to select a date range. And the date range here, if you want something meaningful, I recommend to put at least 6 months or even a year. It might take a while to calculate, by the way. So if it takes too long, if you have a very, very, very large school, we send you a report offline, and you may have to look at a shorter. But my school is pretty large, and I'm able to get a whole year report here. And then the couple of things here that I'm not going to talk too much in detail, but we separate sessions, group class, and appointments, private lessons. The reason, session is a whole different conversation that I think for session retention, we need to look at it in a completely different way. There are some schools who do a lot of group classes, and this report might work for them. But the difference with retention is that if somebody finished a group class and then went to another group class, and those are two different teachers, that teacher did not really lose that student, right? They just went from class A to class B, and from teacher A to so it's not a loss for that teacher. Right. So when we look at group class, you can look at it different ways. And I think when we look at group class, we need to think of it more as a kind of a curriculum. Where did you drop in the curriculum, and not on a per teacher basis? So for some schools who do a lot of group classes, and you tend to stick with the same teacher through these group classes, the report might still be relevant. But I'm going to look here more at private lessons. And what we're looking at, and another detail here is that usually I recommend to have this on, and you can compare it on and off. And the difference here is whether we take into account canceled lessons. And this matter because, let's say at my school, we do summer hold, right? So we let people go on hold for up to 2 months during the summer. But what happens is those subscriptions are still active. Those students are still on the roster for those teachers, but you get a bunch of canceled lessons, right? So So
I
basically,
see.
and then you end up with so if you leave this on, we still count those canceled lessons. So we still assume that you didn't lose that student; they're just canceled for 2, 3, 4, 6 weeks or whatever the amount of is. But ultimately, they were not lost. If you want to look at your summer loss, for example, as loss, like people that ultimately were still active subscribers but canceled a lot of lessons during the summer, you can turn this off and compare both. That both tell you interesting data. But for the sake of retention and average lifetime, I'm going to ignore the summer here and turn this on, and we can deep dive on that if people have questions. But again, this is the main difference, is whether we count. So now let's explain a little bit about how we count this. So we break down by teachers. And we also look at the totals here, but I'll get to that in a minute. And then we look month to month. We look at basically how many actual students that are, and we're not talking about makeups and trials and one-time students. We're talking about students with active subscriptions, right? So students that were active with an active subscription with that teacher. So if a teacher did a makeup for another teacher or whatever, those don't count. So that doesn't count as a loss or a gain. We look at students that are active subscription with that teacher. And so let's take an example here, right? So we look at this teacher, Effie here, back in March 2025, she had 42 students. And then April 2025, she was down to 41 students. So out of those 42 students, there was one lost and zero gained. So that's a net of -1. And that basically means that her retention was 97.6%, right? So that's how we calculate it. So we look at how many students did you have the previous month that were active subscribers, active members, and how many of those 42 did you actually keep, right? So if you gain 3 new ones, doesn't matter if you lost 1. So that's a loss, right?
So
And that
Sam,
gives
one
you
quick question on that is how do you calculate it if a student transfers from one teacher to another teacher within the studio? Is that
yeah.
counted as a loss?
So for that teacher, that counts as a loss, right? So that teacher lost
Okay.
that student, and the other teacher gained that student, right? So
Sure. Okay.
and we can that should average itself out technically, but
Sure.
technically, if on a per teacher basis, it's a loss, right?
Okay.
So we look at so the gain also matter, but the gain don't really count against the retention, because what we care about is how many did you keep, right? So
Right.
so here and what we do, so we look at, okay, in March 100% retention, so from the previous months, this is amazing. April only one lost, 97.6% retention. May nobody was lost. June 2 were lost, so 95% retention. 97, 100. So this is actually very very good.
That's
You can
stellar.
also
Yeah,
scroll.
that's
Yeah,
fantastic.
that's a very good teacher. And if you look at it, what we do after that, so we give you a whole year of data here, and you see this is a very top teacher. By the way, I sorted it by average lifetime, which is, you see my best teachers here. And then we give you the totals, and the totals are very interesting here, because I was the total is a new value that we added just here. Is that I found it very helpful when I do teacher performance review, because then I look at a teacher and look, okay, over the last year, how many students have you lost? And obviously, there's going to be some what I call natural losses. People lose interest over time, or they go to college, or whatever. So you're never going to have like perfect zero loss, right? But you can
Right.
see that from one teacher to the next, it can be very different. So I have a top teacher here that only lost 9 students over the last 12 months. And then if I go down, not to throw this teacher under the bus, but I have one that lost 32 students. That's very, very different, right? And you have this teacher here, for example, that has an average 30 students, and within a year lost 32. So she's lost as many students as you have. And with that data, we can calculate something very interesting, which is the average client lifetime. And basically what we do here is we take the average churn or average retention rate, and you inverse it over and you need here to take you need a significant period of time here, right, to really make sense. So if you look at only 3 months, it's not significant enough. 6 months
Right.
maybe. I recommend to look at 12 months. So we got the last 12 months. We give you the total, and by the way, this gives you a good idea of, okay, if you lost 9 students and you gained 11, right? So those 11, I paid marketing money for you to get those students, right? And you lost 9. And that there's a cost you can associate with that, right? So let's say I and this is a whole new discussion, whole different discussion. But let's say that you get, I don't know, you spend, I don't know, I'll just give round numbers so they're easy to calculate. Let's say you spend $3,000 a month on marketing, and you get 10 new students per month, right? On average, let's say over the last on average.
Right.
So that you take $3,000 you spent on marketing, and the net new students you gain is 10, let's say, that's pretty low, but whatever, that gives you a customer acquisition cost of $300, right? That's a little bit high, actually, I think, on the industry. I was just talking to my marketing team. I think today for a trial on Facebook and Google, today I pay between $60 and $80 for a trial. But that's for one trial. That doesn't mean they sign up. Maybe you need 2 or 3 trials for them to actually sign up. You need to
Right.
take into account that that trial may be discounted, and this is, we can refer to previous discussion you and I about
Well, and
discounted
you got to pay
trials.
your staff to actually conduct the trial. There's the hours for
Exactly.
that. Yeah.
You pay your marketing agency, and that slot is empty for a few weeks. So there's a whole set of costs you can include in your customer. But let's say $100 to $300 is a good customer acquisition cost, right? But let's say 300. So when I look at a teacher performance over the year, I'm like, okay, you lost nine students, and I had to basically get 11 students to fill the gaps in your schedule, and that cost me 11 times 300. Right. Let's say $4,000, right? Which is, this is a top teacher. But imagine a teacher that lost 32 students for the last year. That teacher literally cost me $20,000 in ads to keep that teacher full, the schedule full. So when you do your performance review, I found very helpful to just look at the data with your teachers and look, this is how many students you lost in the last year. This is how much money I spent to keep your roster full so that you can have a full schedule.
Well,
But compared to another teacher, compared to the average of my teachers, you're not a top tier teacher. Maybe you're a mid tier, maybe a low tier teacher. And we need to work together to find why your students are not staying with you longer, and why on average you lose 30 students a year, because that's costing me a fortune to keep your schedule full on a regular basis. So that's a very powerful message. It takes all the emotion and, oh, you don't like me or whatever. No, it's just pure math. This is what you cost me. This is the money you bring into the business, and this is what the business needs to spend to keep your roster full. And eventually, this is how you're being compensated because of your performance, and the numbers speak for themselves.
well,
Does that make sense?
yeah, and it does. And the metric that's really critical here to add to what you're saying is that this teacher here, Effie Zhang, she has an average lifetime of 53.9 months.
Yeah.
So here's where gets really fascinating, is because if, let's say, you're charging, just for simple math, let's say you're charging $200 a month in tuition. Well, if she's keeping the average student for 53 months, then that means that the average student is worth 53 times $200 a month. That's like over 10 grand, the
Yeah,
average student.
exactly.
So that's a tremendously valuable teacher. And all you had to do, all she lost was 9 students, right?
Over 12
So,
months. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
And,
So I
and,
was
and
talking
so,
about this. So actually, for my school, it's $300 per month, the average tuition. So yeah, you take your average client lifetime per teacher, you multiply by how much that student brings in revenue, and it's amazing. And you get also, you can see the difference in a teacher that's a high performer versus maybe a mid or low performer teacher. And by the way, just
yeah,
how we calculate those is the average client lifetime, as you pointed out, is basically we take the average churn over 12 months. Again, this is a mathematical value, right? So it's just an average, but it's very telling, right? So a top teacher that out of 40 students only lose 9 throughout the year basically gives you an average lifetime. It basically, what it means here is that, by the way, this came from you, so thank you so much for the formula here. It means that on average, it will take over 4 years for her to lose. Like, if you start at a certain date, the 40 students that that teacher has, it will take her 4 years to lose all of them on average, based on the
right.
average.
At the rate she's dropping. That's right. If she
Exactly.
continued at the current rate, that's right. And that's honestly, that is really the only way that we can accurately determine this. Because for years, I mean, I'm in the same boat as you. For years, I have seen so many people try to track their student retention unsuccessfully. But when you can get a metric like this, then I agree 100%. This makes your teacher review process, your annual teacher meetings that you're having to determine whether or not they get a raise. This is like black and white. I mean, the numbers are the numbers. You're not making this up. This is based on data, right?
And I literally told teachers, look, on average per year, I have to spend 10 or 20 or whatever, $15,000 in ads. I'd rather give that money to you if you kept your students than give it to Google, right?
Right.
But the money has to go somewhere. I can't spend it twice. I can give it to you and give it to Google to keep your schedule full. I have to It's math, right? My costs are my rent, my teacher salaries, and my marketing money to keep my schedule full, right? To keep my studio full. So it's very, very powerful. And as you said, you look at a teacher that's, let's say, top. And by the way, the way we figure out the top, mid, and low tier, and I guess this is still experimental. I'd love to get some feedback from schools when they look at their real data. Is we take all your teacher, their average lifetime, and we average it, right? So we have the average per teacher, that we average across all the teachers. And by the way, this could be a little bit off if you have teachers that new teachers that just joined or teachers that left. So maybe you want to keep only the teachers that were active for the full 12 months to get a more accurate average. Maybe this average is not super accurate for me here because I have in there some teachers that left and some that started. So we're not getting a full 12 months on the whole teacher here, but just for the sake of the argument, we're getting an average of 25 months, so almost 3 years. But then you have a teacher that's a top performer because she's way above the average. And then you have some that are going to be mid-tier because they're right around the average or below the average. And then you have lower tier. Those are people that maybe we need to work with them and figure out why they're not retaining their students, right? So this is very, very, very powerful. And
Yeah.
it's been just so insightful even for my own school to look at the data and see how much difference there is between a teacher that loses maybe 0 or 1 student per month on average versus one that loses 2 or 3. And when you look at 2 or 3 students per month, you're like, oh well, it happens, right? But then when you average over 12 months, that's 35 students. That's practically your whole roster, right? So that from January 1st to December 31st, those 30 students you have, you're going to lose all of them. And that's crazy, right? That's
Yeah.
the problem. If you lose.
This also opens up another metric that that I find absolutely fascinating and critical for all of us as school owners to know, and that is how many students did you give each of your teachers this year and who
Yeah.
got the most? Because whoever got the most is the teacher you're investing in the most, right? Because you're spending, let's say $200, $300 per student. Let's say you have to give a teacher like 25 students that year, right? That means that you just invested like almost 10 grand into this teacher, right?
Yeah.
And so if their retention isn't holding up, then you need to seriously reconsider your investment choices, right? Because you're investing that money. And what's to say that's going to change? All we can do is go off of the data. So what I love about this is this actually will tell you, number one, you got your top teacher here. You only had to give her 11 total students for the whole year, right? But I'll bet you if you scroll down to some of your lower performing teachers, you probably had to give them a lot more students just to maintain the same level of students. So you're investing way more money on the lower performing teachers than you are on the higher performing teachers. And so then it's like this imbalance. And so obviously as business owners, we want to invest our money in the high performing teachers, not necessarily the low performing
And of
teachers.
course, it makes sense to when you have a new teacher, obviously you're going to invest, right? So for 2-3 months, he's going to sign up.
Sure, but that metric will play itself out when we look at their hire date, right? But if you have teachers where you've given them a ton of students, and you're like, I hired you 3 years ago, and I gave you more students than I'm giving like brand new teachers, that's a huge red flag, and this literally just shows you in black and white.
Yeah, and this is something that was not easy to find before. So I'm so excited that we surfaced this data, and so excited to hear what our customers are going to do with it. But I think it's very telling. I think there's also some, and I haven't looked too much at some of my data, and I'd love to get some feedback from other schools. But I think there's also a per instrument that look that might be helpful to say, okay, on average, I'm still convinced. For example, this is more anecdotally that a 6-year-old. When you sign up a 6-year-old piano student, that's potentially classical piano student that may be with you for 10 years, their lifetime value is significantly higher than a 16-year-old guitar student that's just going to do guitar for a year and then go off to college. And that you need to really think about that when you spend your marketing money and when you hire teachers. Again, if you look at it purely from a numbers game, from a business perspective, if your thing is teaching guitar, go teach guitar and enjoy it. It's not all about the money here, but at the end of the day, if you want to look at your data from a money perspective and looking at your resources and what are the instruments, what are the teachers that perform, where should I spend my marketing money? I've talked to schools that feel like they're never growing, and they have leaky buckets and they just keep spending money on marketing, and maybe they have teachers that lose 20, 30 students a year, and it just feels like it never grows because you're constantly filling the leaky buckets, and maybe it's not a great business model, right? So um, and again, I mean, we can discuss also the artistic and educational side of it, but maybe maybe having a good balance of teachers or instruments, some instruments that are more lucrative, that helps finance those that may be less lucrative that you still want to teach because it's not all about the money. But so I think looking at the data is very, very insightful. Really helps you. I'm really excited about these new reports and new metrics we have. I can't wait to get to hear the feedback from customers. One more I want to talk about very quickly. There's another thing, another report that I was kind of like surprised that so many customers I talked to had no idea we had. So this is the room and utilization report. I'm going to talk about it really quickly because there's nothing really new in this one, but since we're doing a series on retention and utilization and metrics, I want to talk a little bit about this report. This is valuable. So we've added this a good year or two ago at least. It's under the reporting tab here under location room utilization. And the idea here is that you're going to be listing the days that you have lessons. So obviously my school is 7 days a week, but some schools close on certain days. And you got to set here a number. And this is important. If you don't set it, you're not going to get very interesting data. You got to set a target utilization. So this is kind of like, so for my school, it's 6 hours, right? So I know that we're going to do lessons from 3 to 9 during the week and 9 to 3 or 9 to 4 on the weekends, right? So my target utilization for a room is 6 hours. So I want to make sure that when I assign a teacher to a certain room, that we have at least around 6 hours of lessons happening in that room, right? That's my goal. So my target utilization is 6 hours. Then you look at a date, so you can put your current date, and based on what's on the calendar, for each of your location and for each of your rooms. So this is where you're also going to list all the rooms that matter. So take out the rooms where you don't have lessons, for example, or maybe, yeah, I mean, in my school, we have a storage room and a couple of the rooms that are not used for lessons. So you take those out. And what this tells you is that for a given, and based on that time period, so the last week here, for each location, for each room, and you can see also, I have also the instrument that each room can take based on whether they have a piano or a guitar amps or whatever. And you can have one or more teachers assigned to that room. So based on what's on the calendar, you can see that the average utilization. So it tends to be a little bit higher on the weekend days, by the way, because we actually have 7 hours of lessons on weekends. So that's why we have above 100%. But it tells me on average, first, is that room taken? So when I look at my Mountain View Grand Studio, as you can see, it's completely packed, right? 7 days a week, except maybe for Monday in the
What happens if you have multiple teachers in one room?
It's going to show up as I think there's an example here. So for example, here we have Irene and Caitlin. They're sharing the room because there's it's a group class room actually, and one does the morning group class and then does private lessons, and they swap. I usually recommend to assign, if you're big enough, to assign one room for that teacher the whole day and have them teach at least 6 hours. That's a good. It works with most of the labor laws in every state, and so basically, so first it tells you, do you even have any room open? Like right now, if I want to hire another teacher in Mountain View Grant, I can't. All my rooms are completely packed, Saturday to Sunday. I can see that on average, I can see the utilization. So 81, 70, this is a little bit low. Maybe there's some opening in that teacher. Also when you hover on it, you're getting an idea of the use time. So you can see here from 2 p.m. to 9 p.m. that room is taken, and it's mostly piano lessons, piano makeups with a teacher. So it gives you a good idea of, is the room even available at all? And when you need to hire another teacher, you can be like, okay, well, I do have Monday, Mountain View for potentially guitar, violin, or voice lessons here. There's no piano in that room. Now, if I look at my Palo Alto studio, there's a little bit more opening because we just opened a bigger studio. I can see exactly. So we have a room 8 that's wide open here. So great. There's a grand piano room that we can fill up. And I have some spots maybe on Sunday and Monday in certain rooms, but mostly they're pretty packed. And so it gives you a good idea, instead of having to manage this on a separate spreadsheet. It gives you a good idea of what room do you have even open, what rooms do you have underutilized. So teachers that maybe are not full, like Louis on Tuesday, is working from 3 to 8, but has a lot of holes in his schedule, right? So it gives you an idea of the room utilization against your target utilization, which is on average, let's say 6 hours, right? So very helpful. By the way, this report also shows something that a lot of people don't realize, is that if in that period of time you have any conflict, so let's say 2 teachers or 2 lessons overlapping, there will be a little warning. So it's a good way to look at your schedule in the next few weeks and find potential conflicts. We do think we should surface this in other places in the app, so that's probably something we're going to improve over time. But it is there for those who don't know. So very helpful room and utilization report. I still see some things we can improve here. Maybe adding averages per teacher, per location, per room. One thing that I've done, and this is maybe something we'll add in the future, is to take that report, screenshot it, and put it in ChatGPT, and tell ChatGPT, okay, based on my room utilization and what instrument each room can take, who should I hire next? And you get some very interesting insights. So, for example, the typical use case is, okay, well, you have all your piano teachers are 80-90% full, so you clearly don't have a lot of piano room with your existing teachers. But you have a room that maybe 3 days a week is empty that can take piano lessons. So maybe you should hire another piano teacher, right? Because all your piano teachers are full. Now, maybe your violin teachers are not full on average. Maybe they are only 80 or 60% utilized. So you have plenty of room to sign up new violin students. But maybe don't hire a new violin teacher just yet because your violin teachers are not fully utilized, right? Or maybe you don't even have a room that's applicable.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Is there a way to sort this so that you can just simply say, what instrument do I need to hire for? Because usually when you're hiring a teacher, you're hiring for an instrument, right?
Yeah. So right now, Opus One doesn't tell you this. This is some of the cool stuff we want to do with AI in the future. But you can literally screenshot this and paste this in ChatGPT and say, look at my room utilization. And you can tell also the instrument per rooms if you set up your room descriptions correctly. And ChatGPT will tell you some pretty interesting insight, but just based on copy pasting this into ChatGPT. So hopefully in the future we can surface some of these actionable insights using AI directly for you in Opus.
Yeah.
But you can definitely copy paste this. I've done it. It's very, very insightful. You can copy paste this in ChatGPT, get some interesting data. But like I said, it's very helpful. To look at, okay, if I want to hire a next teacher, what should I hire? What rooms do I have available? Which location should I focus on? And you can also get some valuable insight for your ads, right? So, for example, like I said, if all my piano teachers are full and I don't have a new piano teacher to fill up yet, should I even advertise piano lessons right now? What for? I have nobody to take those new students. But yet maybe I should advertise a guitar or violin because maybe my utilization for guitar and violin is lower than it is for piano. So this is something, again, when you look at where do you spend your money, we talked about teacher retention and student retention per teacher and lifetime value of students per teacher, but also kind of where should I spend my marketing money? Right? Should I get more guitar students in, or should I get some piano students in? Who should I hire next? These are all the decisions you have to make constantly for your business. And Opus One shows you the data if you know where to look, and you can get some very, very important, very insightful data there if you look at the right reports.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. So you've got, just to kind of summarize, we've got the My Metrics, where you can now customize what you see at the very top, the metrics that are most meaningful to you, and you can add and take away on demand. You can also see those little icons that compare from last year, last quarter, or whatever, as to how you're performing, which personally, I think last year, that's fantastic, because usually year over year, because it is a seasonal business, right? Like you wouldn't compare last summer to this spring. That wouldn't really make sense. But so year over year numbers, I think comparison that's really, really cool to be able to see at a glance how you're performing based on that. Then you can see those little summaries.
Breakdown by instrument, by location, new metrics around active subscriptions at any time this month instead of just right now. So a lot of new metrics and your breakdown that are super helpful by duration, location, service tag, and those new subscription metrics weighted as well that we didn't have before. So a lot of new metrics for people to dig into and to look at how the business is performing. I'd love to get some feedback on our Facebook group. Feel free to comment and tell us what you like, what we might still be missing. Maybe if you see any bugs or data that doesn't make sense. I'm always happy to get on a call with people to look at the data and to figure out what are we tracking the right things. But I'm feeling very excited about this major improvements that we've just released here a lot of feedback we got from customers over the last months and years, and a lot of improvements here that people are going to be pretty pleased with.
Well, and I'm really excited too about this retention, these new retention metrics that people can now track with their teachers, knowing which teachers are actually, profitable for the business, which ones are draining
Mm,
the business because they're dropping students, and how you can actually see that through Opus One right there in black and white. So it's not your emotions, it's not your opinion, it's not their personality, it's none of those things. It's literally just the data. And now that
exactly.
data is very accessible. So there really isn't any excuse for people to be tracking this. And, you know, I think one thing, Sam, that is going to really help people is this average client lifetime. When you look at that and then you just simply take the amount of tuition that you're charging and you multiply it by that number, average client lifetime, you actually have a dollar number that you can tie that teacher to. That is incredibly valuable. So no, I think this is huge. This is a game changer in my opinion, because now we can actually measure, like reliably measure the value of the teachers in our studio.
Exactly. Yeah.
So fantastic. And like Sam said, if you have any questions, you'll see this. I mean, it's available now. So you'll see this. So make sure you check this out. And if you have questions, definitely fire them away. We want to hear feedback. This is very, very interesting and fascinating. And I really think this is going to help people, especially as this relates to this retention piece, really run their businesses more profitably. So thanks, Sam, for hopping on here and doing this.
Yeah. Thanks,
And
David.
we'll definitely have to circle back as we continue to see more updates.
Sounds good. Thank you for your time.